And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome to Open Connection, I'm your host, Robert Pictou. After 5 years in the role, John Horgan announced that he is stepping down as Premier of British Columbia and has asked his governing party, the NDP, to hold a leadership convention later this year. On today's Open Connection, Minister of Municipal Affairs, Nathan Cullen.
That I have gone through my second bout of cancer and successfully went through 35 radiation treatments, and I am currently cancer-free. And we came to the conclusion that I'm not able to make another 6-year commitment to this job. And
but he told us that he'd made some commitments and life is short, and he's been serving for more than 30 years in different forms, and so that's quite a commitment. And I'm saddened by that, because the steady leadership through, a global pandemic, all the floods and fires, and BC is doing really well, broadly speaking. And I think it's in part because of who we are as British Columbians, but also the leadership that we have in him and others in government that have been guiding us well. So really disappointed. And I really like John. He's been an ally to the North, and but I also very much respect his decision and wish him nothing but the very best.
And I guess this kind of is almost like a deja vu for you, because about 10 years ago, this whole kind of situation came up again. Was that right?
Yeah, when I was in federal politics, I mean, it was much more tragic, of course, because about 11 years ago, after a very strong election, best election the NDP had ever had, Jack Layton passed away a few months later. And he'd been battling cancer, a very serious cancer. And kind of in an unexpected way, I wasn't expecting it. We decided to run for leadership, and I didn't win, but it was a very energizing, incredible experience to go across the country and try to talk to people. It also opens my eyes to what the commitment's like, not just the running, but to be in that leadership role. So this time around, I was in a very similar position. I hadn't been thinking about leadership at all, but when John stepped down, people who I trust and respect asked me to, don't jump out and say no right away, give it a thought. And my family and I had lots of conversations. My boys are going to be 12 soon, and in the end, it didn't feel at all like the right time. I'd be really having a hard time being a good MLA and a good father and husband, and do what's required to be a good leader and premier, which is the job you're asking for. So it was very humbling to be asked, but it's not this time around for me.
Jack Layton, he wasn't really just your boss, but he was also a very good friend. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And Jack was a mentor for me, and I love the way he struggled with leadership and how he approached things, and I learned an incredible amount that I still reflect on to today. John Horgan's leadership was what enticed me back into public life. I had left politics and was fine, and he phoned a few times and was a very persuasive fellow. So I'd come back to serve again, and in part because of the type of leadership that I watched him display, and enjoyed it a lot too. So only got a couple of years with John, but thankfully his health is good. So it's kind of a bit of a Groundhog Day a bit for me. Is I really enjoy great leadership. I've seen the other kind too, and makes everything much more difficult when you've got a different kind of leadership up there. So I've been really blessed for the most part.
You've also have actually recently participated in a historic event that happened over in Haida Gwaii that some people kind of may have caught, but it was really important. Could you tell me why?
Yeah, it's the first time in BC's history where a municipality looked to change its name and reclaim the original Indigenous name for that place. So the small village of Queen Charlotte on Haida Gwaii had spent a couple of years talking to their community at a request from the Haida to say, here's what the original place was called before settlers came in and named it Queen Charlotte. The whole island, as you know, was named Queen Charlotte for quite a time until we returned it back to its rightful name of Haida Gwaii. And no municipality has ever gone through this. And so we're all learning together. I was very proud that I was able to, as Minister of Municipal Affairs, to sign the letters to change its name officially once the community had voted or had a referendum of sorts. The Haida were very supportive, and we had a very beautiful online, but a very beautiful ceremony. And I'll head over in a few weeks to go visit with the communities. It wasn't easy though, Robert. Like, names mean a lot. People get quite attached. There are consequences and impacts of changing a name. But the fact that this was reverting back to the original name of Dudgeon Geets had a lot of power with a lot of people. And in that community, the majority for sure are non-Haida. And it was really strongly supported from the community to revert back to the original name. You know, typically in a ceremony, especially an important one, there might be some songs that need to be sung and acknowledged. And so they paused the ceremony we were going through to say we need to sing, and then started to sing 2 renditions of Happy Birthday, because that day when we had our ceremony was also my 50th birthday. And it was typical Haida, kind of really caring and loving and poking a little fun to make sure everybody knew that I had gotten significantly older. But I've got, lots of connections back to that place, and so much respect for what the Haida have accomplished and are going to accomplish. So it was nice. It was kind of off-putting for a lot of other people from Victoria who were on the call. Why is this very serious event suddenly broken into a happy birthday? And they sung it in Haida too, which I love. It was a lot of fun.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Thank you for staying with us. The Ministry of Municipal Affairs takes leadership on supporting local governments and residents to build vibrant and healthy communities. Let us return to the conversation as Minister Cullen shares the highlights of his recent mayor and council's tour.
I know, coming from the north, that you have to be in people's places, their homes, their main streets, to really understand. You can't do it all by Zoom. You can't do it in meeting halls and hotel rooms in Victoria or Vancouver. And so I'm able to sort of incorporate part of my time with my kids, but drop in on every town I can, and seeing these amazing stories of what communities have been transitioning, have been connecting more deeply, coming up with agreements between them and First Nations at beyond just acknowledging the territory, saying this is how we're going to work together, this is how we're sharing decisions. And there's a lot of work. I mean, this is systemic colonialism and racism that exists in all of these systems. Yet at the very local level, there's this incredible opportunity, because it can be relationship-based, family-based, where amazing progress is being made. So through all the communities, it's, right along with housing and other issues that towns and big cities are facing, cost of living, right there is relationship and agreements and progress with First Nations. Not perfect, lots to do, but man, from where it would have been 10 years ago, night and day. And that's according to the First Nations leaders who I'm talking to as well when I tour around.
And what are some of the other things that the mayors and council have been telling you, saying, hey, you're a representative down in Victoria, we need you to do this, or we need you to do that?
Yeah, well, as you know, living in Terrace, and not just Terrace, it's happening in too many of our communities. Repeat offenders has been a really significant issue, and we've been spending loads of money on mental health and loads of money on housing to make sure people have a home, and we got more to do, but we've been pushing. There is a unfortunate and criminal element of this as well, where you have the majority of the crimes, especially a lot of the theft and assault, minor assault type crimes being committed by the same people, we're challenged because we have a new federal law and we have decisions by the Supreme Court, which have really limited where we can get people sentenced who previously would have been incarcerated. And so there's this revolving door. We've commissioned a really smart panel who are going to come to us with recommendations quite soon of what we can do, creative solutions, and we're going to bring those to the mayors, to the local police authorities, the local social work community as well, to make sure that we're respecting people and offering support, and also making sure that people feel safe in their communities, because that's a big one. Cost of living is huge, right? We all have to look at the price at the pump or in the grocery store. We've done a bunch on that, but it's very difficult. Governments, someone said, take credit for things they don't control sometimes, and they get blamed for things they can't control. We can't control the global commodity prices and the broken supply chain. But of the things we can control, we've been steadily reducing the cost of living. And we've got more to do because it feels out of control. It's just so expensive just for families to get by right now.
And of course, one of those things that when it comes to those repeat offenders, it's not just the RCMP aren't doing their job, because as far as I understand, they're in essence almost overwhelmed by these little cases that take so much of their time.
Yeah, we've had partnership with the police. Like our entire movement on decriminalization, for example, was with support of Dr. Bonnie Henry and the police within BC to say, we got to treat drug addiction like what it is, which is a health emergency, not a criminal activity. And so that's made more room. We've also brought social workers in for those calls when the police are called, but might not be best equipped to handle a mental health crisis, right? And so we've been matching people up to make sure that we're supporting people right and things don't turn violent that don't need to. The police are frustrated as well because they see the same thing you and I do, which is you look at the rap sheet and again, the majority of crimes happening in most communities are being done by a very small minority of people who are learning how to work the system. We have to find our way through this, and because they hurt other people who might be street involved, right? Like everyone thinks they're all criminals, and that's not the case. So this doesn't help anybody, and we got to get Ottawa's attention too. Good intentions probably, but some of the results have been really challenging at the local level.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome back to Open Connection. The eruption of neo-Nazism and white supremacy across the country has exposed the public to symbols, terms, and ideology drawn directly from Nazi Germany and the Holocaust-era fascist movements. Let us return to the conversation as Minister Cullen addresses this issue.
This was happening a lot when COVID was more, making more restrictions on people, and protest is fine. Disagreeing with the government, not liking what I'm doing or liking what I'm doing, that's all fine. But there's a certain and very small element of people who in their, protests use the most hateful racist symbols, vandalize our signs over and over again. It ends up costing us tons of money to go fix. And I don't think they're winning anybody over, frankly, because I've been hearing from a lot of people, and people who don't agree with me or don't like some of the government decisions, who see the vandalism and see the swastikas and all this stuff and are disgusted, as you would be. So I don't know who's doing this. We'll probably have to put cameras on all our stuff. It's too bad. But I think some of it's coming from the online world, social media, where there's just this toxic soup some people are swimming in. Got to pull back and get some perspective. This is not Nazi Germany. This is a free and democratic society where we get to disagree with one another. So it's unfortunate. It's not representative of who we are in the North. I don't think it's going to work in the end, but it's just disappointing, and it can affect people. I think people drive by that and worry about the communities we live in.
Yeah, and I guess it's like you were saying earlier. It's those very small minority of these
Yeah.
nuisance crimes that unfortunately are taking a lot of our resources away for things that are really needed.
Yeah, and I have a lot of, my instinct is to not give it any attention. But then there's a part that says, look, when, like, I'm half Jewish, I've heard from Jewish people that when they see that stuff, they don't think about the COVID restrictions. What they see is somebody using a symbol of hatred to make a point. And I've just been pleading with people, when you want to protest me, when you want to do this, just be aware of the symbols you use. And when you're using hate, it's not just affecting me and my feelings, it affects a lot of people. And again, what are you hoping for? So, I mean, you ignore a lot of the stuff. You can't read a lot of the comments on Facebook because some folks are a bit unhinged on that. It's too bad, because I can remember early days of Facebook, and it was just, sharing photos. There's a public meeting. I disagree, but it didn't have that whole edge and toxicity and people falling down wormholes that lead to some dark places. And I think there's some accountability with Twitter and Facebook and all those guys, because it's kind of their profit model. But anyway, it's probably another topic for another day.
And I guess you could say that kind of leads us a little bit to our next topic is, we need to get out more, but sometimes Mother Nature kind of keeps us from going to places where we want to be. I guess I'm talking about specifically is Lake Babine road washed out. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, it's more rivered out. There's this just whole river that went through the road going up to Babine, and tough for the people that live there. There's a lot of people who have, their summer cabin up there too, and just bang, it went out fast. We saw this tragically last year during the massive flood events, learning all these new terms like heat domes, like it's happening in Europe right now. And, these rivers. The repair has been really good, though. I got to commend the ministry. They were on it. They were on it fast. There's a detour, and now I think we're getting back to the place. But the washout was not a normal sized event. It was huge. And we'll look at getting that road stronger as we build it back.
And if I remember correctly, wasn't the Telten had that same issue where one of their major roads was washed out?
Yeah, if you remember out to Telegraph Creek, because we were just getting different snowpacks and different springs than we'd seen before. And so what roads were able to sustain, suddenly they can't. And it's when we talk about climate change a lot, it might seem sort of theoretical or up in the air somewhere to people. It's made more real when you're under a heat dome like we were last year and Europe is now. It's made more real when there's an atmospheric river that wipes out all of our highways and train bridges. That's when it gets real expensive and disruptive. So we know we've got the best climate change plan in North America, and we have to do more. As much as we've done, we've got to do more.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Traditional wellness and healing is a very important part of Indigenous health that is often overlooked by the healthcare system. In this final segment of Open Connection, Minister Cullen shares about a recent event that happened at the Bulkley Valley District Hospital.
It's stunning to me that this hadn't happened before, and it's taken years to get done, but here in Smithers, Wet'suwet'en territory, you go into the regional hospital and there's nothing that would indicate where this hospital exists. Could be anywhere. And so the leadership at the hospital commissioned some art from James Madden, beautiful Wet'suwet'en artist. Some years ago, it took 8 years to get the commission done. James is a busy guy. But we were able to unveil it. And one of the chiefs said something really important, I think, to me, was the notion that Wet'suwet'en have walked through this place for many years, but we're never allowed to leave any tracks. And now we're starting to leave our tracks. So the welcome sign now when you come in the hospitals in English and Wet'suwet'en. And this is just the beginning. It's just the beginning of looking at our institutions, our libraries. There was a great exhibit in the art gallery from a Wet'suwet'en artist, bringing Indigenous artists from all over the north And the gallery opening was last week, and it was full of Indigenous people from all over and non-Indigenous, and just changing what's going on in the gallery with their leadership. And it's good. It's good. It was a nice day to be at that hospital, to hear the stories, because hospitals are really important things. They're where, well, this is, I remember taking a tour of the hospital in now Dudgeon Geets on Haida Gwaii, and a new hospital, and it had been done with lots of input from the Haida. And the thing that they wanted to show me first was the room where people pass, where people go when they're in palliative care. And the room was huge, and it had a little bedroom kind of thing off to the side. And right away, I was like, oh, this makes sense, because I've been at the bedside of Wet'suwet'en people here when they pass at the hospital, and everybody's in the room, and the room's too small, because the tradition for a lot of Wet'suwet'en families is you bring everybody at that time. And so the Haida were really insistent that those palliative rooms had to be big, and they are. And there has to be a place where family can stay and, overnight, and they are. And I thought, okay, these are the real way. Reconciliation gets knocked around a lot, and sometimes it means something and sometimes it doesn't. I appreciate those moments when you can see people working together and understanding a little bit how we have to change things so folks feel comfortable.
And of course, that's one of the underlying themes when it comes to the NDP government, is that ever since they introduced UNDRIP, I guess they're really making these strides, but some of them are more long-term in order to get there. We can't just have things happen overnight.
Right, because people talk about decolonizing government, and it's a really strange thing, because the whole premise of the thing, the crown land, like the whole matrix of it is based on colonial principles. So how do you maintain a functioning government while you go through the process of doing things like changing the way we make decisions? So under the UN Declaration of Rights is this section where we talk about co-decision making, co-management. And we signed an agreement, the first of its kind anywhere in the world, with the Tahltan, right, just a few months ago. And that is co-decision making between the Crown and the Tahltan leadership over some really important things. It's never been done. And government, it holds on to its authorities jealously. Guards, anybody does if you have certain powers, I guess you want to keep them. And so as an institution, how do you talk about things like sharing the decision, sharing the authority, sharing the enforcement, like we're doing on the coast with the Guardians program? It's a big shift. It was done over many generations. Hopefully it will not take many generations to undo and to come together and become something different entirely. That's what the Delgamuukw case in the Supreme Court said, right? No one's going anywhere. So come back to us with how you're going to get along, and hopefully we can realize that here and get in Wet'suwet'en territory as well. And
Nathan, is there anything I might have missed that you'd like to add?
No, it feels like we went the full range and gamut. Lots more. There's lots to come. It's going to be a really busy fall. You're going to see a lot of things coming from us that I hope will answer some of the big questions, some of the ones we talked about today. But I appreciate the time.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Open Connection. The greatest distance in the existence of man is not from here to there, but the connection from his mind to his heart. If we can conquer that distance, we can soar like an eagle and realize our immensity within. I'm Robert Pictou.